Welcome to Willow Healing Matters, the podcast. We are so excited to have you joining us on this journey where we explore different ways to empower your soul, whether it's healing in your kitchen or all the way up in the corporate world. Come with us as we look into different ways to heal your mind, body, and soul. Hey everyone, it's Catherine from Willow Healing, and I am delighted to have the beautiful Samantha Kurtz with us today. So she is a somatic therapist and an embodiment expert and has started her own business called Self with SK. Her mission is to create a higher standard and new paradigm of love and relationships through women redefining their relationship with self. So important. And she runs transformational events, retreats, and experiences for women in Australia and in Bali. So a big welcome to the show, Samantha. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you, Catherine. I'm honoured to be here.
So for those who are listening, I feel we need to break apart what a somatic therapist and embodiment expert actually means, because if no one's heard those terms, they're probably like, who is this person?
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like they are buzzwords that, in the online space, in the therapy space, in the pop psychology space, I feel like we go through phases and trends with particular buzzwords.
Yes.
And, there's a spectrum. I do believe that there's a spectrum and there's always more to learn in everything. I'm not here to say that I know everything about somatics and everything about embodiment. But somatics for me and embodiment was truly the missing piece to my healing and awakening journey. I was doing all of the things and there was something missing. And I myself have had a lot of trauma throughout my life.
Yep.
And the missing link was working with the body and actually feeling the transformation. I was going to these events, I was doing these programs, I was working with these coaches and mentors, but I was intellectualizing everything.
Yep.
And it's because I didn't feel safe within my body, and my nervous system was living in a state of survival and constant fight or flight. So the truth was I didn't feel safe within myself. I didn't feel safe around men. I didn't feel safe around women. I didn't feel safe out in the world. And it was knowing a lot of things, and I was a woman who was talking the talk, but I wasn't walking the walk. And the body is also the reason that I like to bring the body on board, is because that's our unconscious as well. So I was working a lot with like my conscious mind and like having awareness and all of the things and becoming very self-aware. But like Carl Jung says, our unconscious basically rules our life and we just call it fate. Yeah. And so for me, I was just like, I was kind of in the middle there of being like, no, like, yes, I understand that this is being passed down and I can see where this comes from, but no, I'm not settling for that. Like, no, this isn't my fate. No, like, I am willing to do whatever it takes to figure out how to work through this. So I believe that the transformation lies with bringing the body on board, and somatics is essentially, for me, I'm about getting to the root cause. So there's a lot of people out there talking about, like, you just got to regulate your nervous system. And I'm like, that's just the shiny object syndrome and the Band-Aid that people are putting over the top with regulation tools. What we need to be looking at is actually, one, tracking the sensation, which is what I do with somatics. So somatic therapy for me, the main thing that I have studied and become trained in is IFS, so internal family systems work.
Yep.
And working with the different parts in our psyche. And so for me, I believe everything starts with a sensation. And if we actually can, feel safe within our body to be with the sensation and get wisdom and knowledge out of the sensation first, before it then goes and creates all these beliefs and stories, and then it creates these big emotional experiences and all of the rest. So for me, it's really about, okay, your nervous system is doing this. This is how you tracked it and how you decided that this is what nervous system or trauma response you're in. So what's actually making you feel unsafe? What's the threat? And like I said, it's so much easier to project it onto everything and everyone else outside of ourselves. A story of mine for so long was, I don't feel safe around men. But this is why my business is called Self. I didn't feel safe within myself around men.
Yeah.
So that's the somatic side of it. And embodiment is, a lot of my life I felt like I was broken.
Yeah.
And it's because I had so many fragmented parts within my psyche, and which was making me essentially feel like I was broken and that there was something wrong with me. And so embodiment is really about wholeness. That's the best way I can describe embodiment, is coming into that alignment of mind, body, and soul. Whereas I feel like a lot of people out there, and don't get me wrong, I feel like the journey, sometimes it's a bit overwhelming to work on all three at the same time. So trusting wherever you're at in your journey, and like it's, the small daily devotions, instead of like, oh my God, I've got to be working on mind, body, and soul all together. That's not how my experience went, I like to work with all of the bodies as well. So like mental, body, energetic, mental, emotional, energetic, physical, and spiritual bodies.
Yeah.
But again, like I said, some of these bodies I spent a year or two on, and then it was like, oh, okay, we've worked on that. We have an understanding of that. We've moved through some things, and then it's like wherever life's taken you next. But I truly believe that missing link that women may be looking for is that wholeness and that congruency of mind, body, and soul, and feeling safe within their own body.
And I feel a lot of people don't realize how much we actually store trauma in our body, like in our organs and in our systems. And sometimes it's not even our trauma, right? Sometimes it's family trauma that's come through generations. And it's only once we start to pull it apart and listen to our body, like you were saying, that we go, oh, there was a whole heap of grief in here, or there was a whole heap of fear about this. No wonder I constantly would not do that opportunity, or no wonder I would constantly push money away because I've got all these beliefs coming through, or, and it's having that grace and, like you said, that love with yourself to be open to explore that further and know that you've had the courage to do that too.
Yeah, honestly, generational and ancestral trauma is actually one I've got goosebumps. It's one of my favorite, traumas to talk about, because I like to look at the whole ecosystem as well.
Yeah.
Because again, this is where I tripped up. I'd had such traumatic experiences in my life that I was going to therapy and just talking about, oh, my dad just died suddenly and I wasn't speaking to him. So we're dealing with that trauma. But no one had ever actually sat down and looked at the human being in front of them and actually said, okay, talk to me about your whole life, your whole ecosystem, your family, and this is now what I do for women, because generational and ancestral stuff is real. I have, gone back into timeline therapy and realized I was carrying imprints from before I was even born.
Yeah.
That was passed down to me when my dad was, before I was even conceived.
Yeah.
And that existed and lived. That was an energetic and emotional imprint within me. Yeah. And it had such a hold over me, which is wild.
Yeah. And then you think, you're this little baby coming into the world, and as soon as you come in, you already have this whole heap of belief systems that are already encoded into you, suppressing your divine blueprint. So instead of coming in and just being your radiant self, you have to unpack all this other stuff, plus the childhood trauma, plus everything else that happens that we've signed up for in this life. And, it's like, wow. And so many people are like, oh, when does the healing finish? And I'm like, but it doesn't, because you keep things happen to you in life, and then you keep learning from it. And if you're in a strong enough position where you love yourself and you have that grace and that curiosity, then it helps you move through that rather than just shutting it down, which is possibly what you were doing in the past.
Oh, and it's all to do with that level of safety within and our nervous system, right? Love and compassion for myself and any other women out there. We're not going to come into a place of wholeness if we're constantly judging and criticizing and, on the path of self-hate, and, we're never doing it right. And that's the thing with the unconscious, which is the body essentially is, it has a different agenda than your conscious mind. So you can do all the conscious manifesting and all the conscious, intention setting, but unless you're exploring and excavating your unconscious to see what its belief system and agreements and agenda is, we kind of just sit there and we're like, well, why are we getting this result? And it's because it has, it has its own path, so it can keep affirming to you your unconscious beliefs to be true.
100%. And then, you know, you just sit there and you're like, there's something missing. So for me, my journey recently has been about finances, because I kept deflecting money somehow. Like, I'd have money and it'd all disappear and I didn't even know how. And then when I pulled that apart, it was a subconscious belief that I wasn't worthy of it, that I didn't deserve to have money, that because I'm not working hard, you know, that whole mantra, like you have to work hard to earn your money, that was so imprinted in me that I was like, oh no, I'm not working 7 days a week because I chose not to, and all of a sudden I don't have enough money, and where I was feeding into that belief. But then when I addressed that and stepped back, then I could go, okay, let's work on the self-worth and the self-love, and then we can move on from there.
Yeah, and some of these beliefs are so deeply imprinted and ingrained that it can take years. And that's one thing I always like to presence as well, is exactly what you said. The destination everyone's looking for is the journey.
Yeah.
Like, it's the biggest lie we've been sold, to like just figure out what you want to do in your life and then you'll be happy and at peace, you know? The human experience is messy and it's absolutely not linear, and none of us are safe, not even the people who have just like settled and given up in every area of life because they'd rather not have it than, you know, lose it. Whatever the story is, it's we aren't fully protected from this human experience. We're not in control, you know. And I totally feel you on that belief of you've got to work hard to be successful and make money. My God, am I still unshackling from that one?
And then, you know, being rich is bad. That's another thing, you know, because you see all these rich people and you're like, oh, I don't want to be like them. You know, even to the point my boss went, oh, I'm going to make you rich. And I said to him, I don't want to be rich. And then later I'm like, why would I say that? You know, it's not a bad thing. So,
right.
Yes, but it's just like all these things that subconsciously have been programmed in. And even, you know, I realized that I had a breathwork session the other day, and I realized that I picked this card, this tarot oracle card, and it said free yourself from addiction. I'm like, what addiction? I don't have any addictions, you know, but I was addicted. I was addicted to dimming my light. So instead of, you know, expressing myself fully, I would always shut down or like pretend I didn't know, or, you know, even at school I wouldn't put my hand up and answer the question, you know, and all this stuff came up and I was like, oh my goodness, you know, so it's just another piece of the puzzle, right?
And even in those words, as soon as I'm working with a woman and she says to me, I am not, or I don't, I'm like, that's where her work is, right? Because it's like they're words that I use for our identity or to de-identify with something. And so that's a perfect segue, because when we're talking about wholeness, if I hear the words, if a woman comes and works with me, then my job is, okay, embodiment, we're bringing you into wholeness. So what are you still rejecting within yourself or de-identifying within yourself? Because the minute we say that, it's usually like what we're running from is actually running us. Yeah. And it can happen in the most sneaky of ways, like you just realized.
Yeah. And it's so imprinted so down. And I feel too, for people listening, it's not that we're trying to scare you off this healing journey, because when you shed this stuff and when you realize it and it shifts, magic happens in your life. Like, just magic. That's the only thing I can describe. And then my thing that I usually tell people is that if you heal it in you, you're healing it for your kids, your grandkids, or the other way, or, you know, you've got to have the courage to step up and do it, you know? So
yeah.
So
absolutely.
Yeah, and I guess from there too, like it's such a journey, and you just have to honor that every step of the way and give yourself the grace. And you think you've done with something, and then another layer pops up, right?
I just spoke about this on my Instagram stories, because this year has been one of the most potent years of transformation for me personally. and I work in women's work. And what's really interesting is on social media is people say they want more realness, more humanness, more rawness, but then their nervous system can't handle and hold it.
Yeah.
You know, they're like, oh, I got to turn away. I can't look at that, because maybe they don't feel safe in themselves to feel their full spectrum of emotions or handle their non-linear seasons and cycles. And I just said on my stories, I'm like, as women, because I work in women's work, women are the creators of life. So I have several, you know, seasons and cycles that I share with my clients, like the death and rebirth cycle, the seasons and cycles of the butterfly. And I also like to speak about like a gestation, a pregnancy. And it's like, we've got 4 trimesters for a reason, and women aren't here just to birth babies into the world. What else are we creating? Businesses, projects, art, like whatever it is. And with doing that and living to our natural biology as women and being the creators of life, we are going to constantly walk through those fires and seasons and cycles of transformation, you know? So it's really, really important to not go through it alone, because you're not alone. And to invest in, you know, those coaches and mentors, or be around like-minded women. Like, I've just created a free community because women need tribe and community. You know, it's not natural for us to be at home on our phones, disassociated and doom scrolling our phones. That's why I niched down this year as well. Like, I have an array of online programs, but I chose events, retreats, and experiences for women, because nothing beats in-person transformation, because it's actually felt, you know. I think I love social media, I love the benefit of it. However, people are at a point now after the spicy flu where people are just hiding now and isolating and avoiding, and it's like time to come back into real, true human connection.
Yeah. And I guess too, this is like part of people's journey as well, about finding their tribe, because as you heal things and people fall away, it doesn't mean you've done anything wrong. And I want to put that caveat there, because a lot of people are like, but I'm doing all the work and all of a sudden this person isn't talking to me anymore. And it's just because they don't resonate. You know, they're not in your frequency zone anymore, and that's okay. You know, if they're meant to come back, they will. If they're not, well, then someone else will come in your life, which will help you grow again. So, you know, I love that you have created this community, but so that people can have a tribe, because it's so important not to be alone.
I think people don't talk about that enough too, right? It's like, just because I'm known for the statement, it gets to be both. It's my personal and my professional philosophy. I even created an event called It Gets to Be Both, because it's one thing people don't talk about enough. It's like, you know, I also went on the journey of spiritual bypass, toxic positivity, and it caught up with me, you know, and I see it catch up with people all of the time. And it's like, you know, even though we're choosing something now and creating from a place of love for ourselves or love for our life, and choosing to play full out and choosing to live an authentic, aligned, alive life, and it feels true, does not mean that there isn't going to be sadness and grief along the way. And so how can we be able to hold both simultaneously, which is what a lot of people can't do. Like, a lot of people cannot actually hold both in their nervous system. They're like, people are addicted to certain emotions as well. And that's actually what I talk a lot about in my work is, you know, I talk a lot about emotional embodiment, and women being embodied and being able to access a full range and spectrum of emotions, and not, you know, it's not the pain that people are scared of. No. People are actually quite comfortable in the pain. People are scared. The most vulnerable of states for people is their pleasure, is their fun, is their joy, success, aliveness, because they're then hypervigilant when they access it and those great times, because they're scared of losing it. And so they'd rather not have it, you know? And as I think a lot of people are talking about trauma in the way of too hard, too fast, too much, too soon. But the trauma that I like to talk about that I don't think a lot of people are is the not enough for too long trauma. So if people have, you know, been neglected as a child and weren't loved in the way that they needed to be loved, yet they're on this endless pursuit of trying to find love, even within themselves, they won't be able to hold that and access that, because usually the feeling that people are chasing is the feeling that they've never actually experienced. And so, one, they're not going to know it when it's in front of their face, and two, they may not be able to receive it.
Yeah.
Because it's just like, I don't know what this is. I don't know how to hold it. I'm petrified of that. And so they push it away. The amount of women, when I started out just as more like a mindset-y, coach in the beginning, I had a lot of self-aware clients, and they manifested all of these things, and they look back now and they're like, I couldn't hold it. And I was like, yeah, and that's where the body and the nervous system and somatics comes into it.
Yeah. And I feel too, it's a lot of people don't realize that when you've cleared something properly, it's like a neutral feeling. So it's not like, you don't get overly excited about it. You don't feel sad about it. It doesn't pull up the triggers anymore, because you've actually sat within it enough to make it neutral. And it's from that neutral place that you can create new things and open up yourself to receive new emotions and receive new relationships and receive whatever it is you want to bring into your life. But like you said, being addicted to the heightened emotions isn't ideal either, because you're not going to wake up every day and be like, yeah, it's going to be amazing. And it's like, oh, I've got this horrible client today, but it's going to be amazing. Like
imagine if that was I've done that. And imagine if that was your baseline, because if one thing goes out of whack or blindsides you, that's a hard fall. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And again, I've absolutely lived that. And I think that's a lie we've been sold, is chase up, up, up. But what a lot of people don't realize is, if you want the up, it has to be both, baby. The more that you're willing to go to the depths, the more that you will access the heights. Exactly. You can't cherry pick your way out of this human experience. No. And go, I'm willing to feel that in my life, but not that. You know what I mean?
And it's that someone once said to me, if you knew how to go to A to Z, why would you do everything in the middle, right?
Literally.
But my coach, actually, he has a really good saying that you need to learn how to master the mundane. So, even when your life seems quite monotonous, or you're in this state of holding pattern, you still try and find, the magic and the joy and the things within that is going to keep you motivated to keep getting up in the morning and keep doing what you want. Because if you're not connected with truly what you want, then when you, like you said, when you come up with these grief or something unpredictable, or the trauma pops up again, or something pops up again, what's going to keep you going?
Absolutely. And that's the transformation. If people are actually transforming, if people are actually here on the path of self-actualization, then again, it's not linear, and there are different seasons. When I'm not going to go invest in someone that's just showing me a linear path and the same day in, day out. Because for me, I'm like, you won't be able to support me through the seasons and cycles of transformation. But also it's good to think that people want a transformation. But like I said, if people have to see and feel you in the trenches of transformation, they're like, oh, turn away, I can't see that. I can't handle that,
Especially when you go through things and you trigger stuff in them. So I remember when I got divorced from my first husband, so many of my friends fell away or didn't know what to do, because I was triggering stuff up in their relationships and making them reflect on whether they were truly in a place of growth and happiness and in a supportive relationship. And they were just constantly like, I don't know what to do with this, because it's really uncomfortable and you're reflecting these things that I don't want to look at. So, they just fell away. It's just... Yeah.
I've been there.
Yeah.
I've absolutely been. That's why, like you already explained my mission at the start, but I do so much, and it's taken me so many years to anchor into what actually is my mission and vision that I want for women? And honestly, out of all the areas of life, the thing I'm most passionate about that I actually think a lot of people are chasing, whether they want to admit it or not, is love.
Yeah.
But it's also the thing that people struggle to give and receive.
Yeah.
And so it's just, we weren't even questioned, or we don't even ask ourselves what we believe love is, or a thriving relationship. A lot of people are just in survival-based relationships.
Correct.
And so that's why I mentioned a new paradigm, a higher standard of love and relationships, because relationships aren't where we go to die. It's not a prison sentence. It's like, when someone says, oh, I'm not going to call you out on your shit, and I'm going to let you play in your wounds, and I'm going to let you gain 20 kilos and give up on your dreams and desires, that's codependency. That's not a co-committed relationship and that's not love, in my opinion. That's not love at all. Love is, hey, I see your highest timeline, and I'm going to be your biggest hype girl, and I'm going to hold you to that. And when we have those down days, I'm going to be there, I'm going to hold space, but I will forever see you, feel you, and hold you to your highest.
Yeah.
Like, it's also not fair on our partners for us to give up on ourselves. And I think women think they wear the martyr badge of honor, like, oh, I'm self-abandoning and I'm putting my husband first and being a good little wife. And it's like, but then they're unattracted to their partner. They're not having sex. They're not having date nights. They're, living in this roommate, brother-sister paradigm. There's zero romance, zero passion. But it's the lie we've been sold of what makes a good woman.
I think you just described my first massive marriage.
I've been there, love. I've been there. I get it. It's why I can speak it, I've never been married, so I don't want to, it was an edge for me to take up space in love and relationships industry, because I'm not married. I've never been married. I've walked away from 2 engagements, and, it's the biggest pain point and wound for me in my life is love and relationships, actually. And I think, I'm here to illuminate, expand, and awaken people. And so for me, I had to get over myself and know that it was bigger than me. I've got women in my life who the best relationships I've seen are the women who are in my life, and they come to me for relationship advice, So if I wanted to be in a relationship right now, I could. But the thing is, I have standards, and I want a thriving relationship. And relationships were meant to come closer to ourselves, not become a shell of ourselves. So, it was really edgy for me not being in a relationship to come back and really take up space there, because I think people think a thriving relationship is we've been married for 20 years. Well, longevity doesn't mean shit, in my opinion. My last relationship was 4 months, but we were on and off trying to figure it out, trying to make it work for a little over a year. And that was a better relationship than most relationships I see in the world.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I say to people. I'm like, how many relationships are you actually inspired by when you look around?
Well, it's like my husband and I, we met, like, we weren't even looking for it. Right? But we were both in such a happy place with ourselves that when we found each other, like, we were independent, doing our own thing, not wanting to cramp. But then, of course, we worked through together all the triggers from our exes because they come up too. People don't realize, you carry all this baggage even though you think you've shifted on. And then, he pushes my buttons. He truly pushes my buttons, but in a way of growth, not in a way of, I'm just doing it to annoy you. It's like, well, hang on a minute. Why don't you take a step back and look at that? But at the same time, when I'm like, I'm going to do my own thing, he'll just let me do it. And he doesn't say, I told you so. He doesn't do anything like that. He'll be like, okay. And I find being in a supportive relationship like that, where you truly have a respect for each other and you are authentic with each other, that is where you can have that growth and that love, because you're allowing each other the space to be purely who you want to be.
Exactly. There's no power dynamics. There's no control. There's nothing but love and support, and receiving each other a good, dose of giving and receiving. Yeah. And we are still individuals. Like, that's another thing. People, their whole identity has become, I see in This may sound judgmental, but it just makes me laugh and it makes me sad. I see in women's bios such and such as wife and such and such as mum, and I'm like, okay, or like this business owner, and I'm like, amazing. So who are you outside of all of that?
Yeah.
You know, like, who are you?
It's funny you say that, because I ask people I meet on social media and things like that, I ask them 3 questions, and the first one is, who are you and how do you identify yourself? And people freak out. They don't actually know how to answer it. And it's like,
Literally.
yeah. And they're like, and then even the how do you identify yourself? And they're like, oh, I'm a woman or I'm a man. I'm like, no, like, how do you actually tell people who you are? And, you know, and it's such a simple question, but it's actually quite reflective. And it's, if you don't actually have that knowledge of who you are yourself, it's really hard to answer.
Absolutely. And I think, I'm funny with identity. I work a lot with identity, and again, it gets to be both. I feel like a lot of suffering comes from our identity as well, you know? So it's like, how can we have this strong sense of self? This is where I'm very nuanced. I feel like I'm a walking, talking contradiction. It's like, your business is called self. Aren't you all about having a strong self-concept and like ego and identity? And yes, I absolutely am. But also, the more that we attach to that, especially when we're on a journey of growth and transformation, it's like that's where a lot of that's where a majority of my sufferings come from throughout my life, is like, but I'm this, and I've just worked so hard to create this new sense of self and identity, and what now, you're going to put me through the fires again and see like who I am without that now? And because it's a constant becoming, you know.
And you know, I was going through at one point, and all my clients, I was channeling for them, and I kept getting the same images where people keep putting themselves in boxes, right? These identities. And because that's what society wants, you know, like, oh, what degrees have you done? Or, you know, what certificates have you got? Or, you know, put yourself in another box. And then I always got the image of, you need to bash those boxes down and just let it blurb together and see what comes up. You know? So,
literally.
Yeah. And it was like, instead of being in these boxes with rigid paradigms and this is who I am and I fit in nicely into this box, it's like, no, I'm in a giant bubble that's growing and, you know, contracting and moving with me. And if something has to slip out of the bubble, so be it. You know, I'm not going to say I'm a mom, I'm a wife, I'm a speech therapist, I'm a healer, I'm a this. You know, sometimes you have to use those labels, but at the same time, I'm like, when people ask me what I do, I'm like, I don't know how to encompass that really quickly. Like, you know.
When, like, I even have resistance when people are now, she's a somatic therapist and embodiment expert. Did you feel my resistance when I'm like, listen, I don't know everything about somatics and embodiment, because I've never liked labels. People who have worked with me long term, when they, you know, introduce me at events or in their containers, the statement I like to live by is, you know, I want my legacy to be around who I be, not what I do. Perfect. You know, like who I be as a woman, because I'm constantly, like, I've had 4 businesses in the last 17 years, you know, like, try and keep up. So if people keep needing to attach, and I understand why they do, it's because of understanding. People want to understand and they want to be understood. But this is the problem. A lot of people are attaching things to things that they're outgrown in order to try and be understood, yet they're not even understanding themselves.
Yeah.
And for me, it was a really big turning point where one of my biggest wounds was the fear of being misunderstood. Yet I was just like, I don't even fucking understand myself most days. Like, you know what I mean? And that was a huge turning point for me, because I was just like, and I'll never forget a question that one of my beautiful friends said to me, and it was like, well, let's just go off, like, who are you today? You know?
Yeah.
And that's what I would like to share with everyone, is like, who are you today? And like, even for your loved ones in relationships, instead of like being like, but you said this, you did this yesterday, this is who you were yesterday. Like, when you actually are committed to the path of self-actualization, you don't have to go digging for the work. You don't have to go invest thousands of dollars here and there to learn about yourself and explore and experience yourself so deeply. You just have to have a devotion and deep intentionality and presence with yourself day in, day out. And it's like, I am not the person I was yesterday, you know? So, like, the more that I could let go of life needing to make sense, of me needing to make sense all the time, of everyone else needing to make sense, the more free and liberated I felt as well.
And I guess too, it's that keeping that curiosity. I had another guest on. We talked about maintaining that child sense of wonder and curiosity in your life, and you step back and go, huh, I wonder why they did that, or I wonder why I did that. And constantly like that curiosity and exploring and having the freedom and the grace and giving yourself that space to do that is where a lot of the growth can actually come from.
I 1000% agree. And I believe at the start of your journey, I want to just share this bit in case anyone is at this part where I got so obsessed with knowing why, because if you came from a generation that led children to be seen, not heard, it was like we couldn't ask questions, right? We couldn't challenge our parents. We couldn't challenge authoritative figures or people of influence. And so we just learned to go with the flow and like not ask why. And so that's a very important part of the journey at the start, but it became really toxic for me. It's like I started to overanalyze myself and go down massive rabbit holes like you would not believe, because I was just like, why? And it became really toxic. And so if you're at that part of the journey, my recommendation is to start asking what instead of why, because why will just send you down a rabbit hole of like you're constantly broken and you constantly need fixing. And because my first point of call is always turn the finger back around on self, and in an empowering way, not in a critical way of like, oh, this is my fault, because that's still a sneaky way to play the victim, So it's like, how can we turn the finger around in an empowering way, see what's here for you? However, don't get like consumed by that and just start going, what? Like, what am I experiencing? What am I feeling? And it gets to be as simple as that. Instead of like, I need to, oh my God, why? But why would I think, where does that, oh my God. Like the amount of like rabbit holes and like self-destruction that I've put myself through, because it does become addictive. Like you said, it really is worth it. There really is magic on the other side. If you can get through it, and that does become addictive.
Well, yeah, and it's so funny too when you bring up the why, because I'm quite intuitive and I get a lot of, I'm claircognizant, so I get like instant downloads. And I just go, okay, I don't even question the why anymore. I used to. I used to question it and search it and go, oh yeah, okay, that makes sense why you're telling me this person needs this herb or why they need this or, blah, blah, blah. I used to search it. Now I just go, okay. And I move on. And people are like, but why? And I was like, oh, I can ask for you. I just don't bother anymore. Hang on. It's like...
Yes, because you have such a level of self-trust, right?
That's it.
I think for women as well, that's one of our superpowers. Yes. And it saddens me when women are very stuck in their head. Like they're my women. Like, I attract very intelligent, self-aware women. And like they've been doing the work, but I'm like, I'm usually people's last point of call. Because they've tried all the shiny objects, And they're like, oh, I actually have to feel fully naked, fully exposed, like fully be seen. Because I'm like you, I'm very intuitive, and I feel, women are very disconnected from their natural biology as a woman. And, it's because they don't trust themselves. They don't feel safe within themselves. And so that superpower of intuition, you can't make logical sense of that.
No.
That's intuition. Like the more that I let go of things needing to make logical sense, the more intuitive I become. Because intuition usually does not make logical sense until in hindsight, where you look back and you're like, that's why.
Yeah, it's like, I don't know why, but I just felt to stop and get petrol today, even though I really didn't need it. But I had this feeling that I had to get it. And then you drive past this accident and you're like, that's why I felt to stop and get petrol today. Thank you, universe. Thank you. So...
Yes.
All right. Well, as we finish our time together, Samantha, this has been a delight. I often ask my guests if you could heal something in the world, or you could change something in the world to see a great change, what would it be?
Oh, goosebumps. There's so much. And, you know, one thing I've really held myself accountable for this year is I got really consumed by looking at all the wrong in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, without spiritually bypassing, it absolutely gets to be both. If there's one statement I want to give to anyone listening, is it does get to be both, and both does exist. However, it's like what we focus on, right? So if I was to pick one thing, though, I would say women's relationship with themselves.
Yeah.
And just really, truly, you know, one thing I notice in women is this collective feminine wound of wanting to be chosen. And that's the fairy tale Disneyfied, you know, picture that's been painted to us is like the man chooses the women. They propose to us, and like they say what goes. And it's like women aren't choosing themselves, you know, and they think they are, but they're still not fully. You know, it's not felt as a feeling chosen. And I even say that in the way of the work, you know, if you're getting into any kind of personal, spiritual development, healing, awakening type work, and you're playing a victim to it, like, oh, I have to do this because I've realized it runs in my family and I'm the cycle breaker, then it's disempowering. It's fear-based foundations. And that's what I say to any women. I attract a lot of women who have had a lot of trauma, right? Because I have. And it's difficult. It really is difficult. But I understand why I attract them. And, you know, I say to them, I'm like, you're the chosen one. Like, you are the chosen one, and I really invite you to be able to feel that and deeply embody that. Because you may be the first one in however many generations, but it's like, and it may feel heavy and it may feel hard, and it's actually going to from time to time, but it also, you're the first one that gets to set yourself free. And you are the chosen one. Like, you were led to me, or you were led to this work or this experience because something bigger than us has gone, you are worthy of this life. You are worthy to feel good. You are worthy to set yourself free of all of the pain, trauma, wounding, all of the conditioning, anything that was passed down to you. So for me, it's just more about women focusing on their relationship with self, regardless if you're a mother, regardless if you're a lover. Like, women are constantly, I believe, have this wound of wanting to be chosen as well, because they feel like they have to constantly choose. I can't have this and this. You know, I can't be an amazing, you know, wife and an incredible mother. I can't be a business owner and be a present, incredible mother, you know? And it's like, how can we do this work so it gets to be both, and we can prime our nervous systems to stretch our capacity to hold more in this life?
And it's, instead of a no, it's how can I have it all and make it work for me? Yeah.
Definitely. And that takes time. It takes devotion.
Exactly. And also have fun along the way, people. Don't be it's
Jesus.
Yeah,
and you can, right?
Yeah, and you can step back and you can just laugh at all the shit that life has thrown at you sometimes and go, I can't believe that happened in that series of events, but hey, I can laugh about it and lighten that and, you know, let that come to the surface so we can move on and go, wow, that was an experience. I don't really want to go through that again. That's just like, okay, how can we move on now? So
one of my favorite mentors I've ever worked with said enlightenment is just about lightening the hell up.
Yes. Perfect. What a nice way to end the show. Enlightenment.
I know.
Is the way to lighten the hell up.
I agree.
Oh, this has been amazing, Samantha. Thank you so much for coming on. And I will pop all your details in the show notes as well. So if anyone wants to connect with Samantha and feels they need some embodiment and self-empowerment, then you can connect with her and you can find all the details in the show notes. Thank you so much.
My pleasure, love. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for listening to Willow Healing Matters, the podcast. We have so much love and gratitude that you have taken the time out of your day to empower you on your healing journey. The views shared by the person being interviewed might not necessarily reflect that of the host and should be used at your own discernment. Trust what resonates for you and follow your heart and soul guidance. If you have any underlying medical conditions or mental health issues, please consult with your healthcare provider before pursuing any of the recommendations. Likewise, you can always contact the person being interviewed to find out more information. This can be found in the show notes. Remember to activate, align, heal, empower, and find love in everything that you do.